Where you going? No, man. You got the right classroom. Come on in, take a seat beside me, my friend. Hey, look, here come T.A. Charlie. Let's see what he got to say.
I heard Gummy Bear.
And now broadcasting from a remote location deep in the bowels of the LA wilderness, somewhere under the wood and metal of a nondescript building, surrounded by schnauzers and model tanks, we once again bring you The Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic. Homeroom is on Rumble. You just go to Rumble and you search the channels for The Road to Concord. It's one word. When you find it, you go ahead and you click follow. It might mean you got to set up an account, but it's fast, it's easy, it's free. I did it. You can do it. For those technologically challenged members of the class, you can catch us on Facebook, Twitch, TwitX, and even YouTube today. I hope that's good. Then you can catch the podcast after the show. It's uploaded to Podbean, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, and hopefully eventually BitChute. Just look for The Road to Concord. You can go to the blog page. That's theroadtoconcord.com. That's where you find all your show notes, study notes, and handouts for the class. Finally, you can email a professor at joe@theroadtoconcord.com. He's a little slow, but he'll eventually get around to emailing you back. Actually, he's doing pretty good.
Oh, crap. I've got one I've got to answer. I forgot to answer the other day.
Uh-oh.
It's
He's got one that I didn't know about.
I'll get it. I'll get it.
If you find our classes helpful, please click the thumbs up, like, follow, subscribe, and share it with those you think could benefit from it. Just warn them. Joe is an acquired taste, and you will find that out today, I believe. This show is listener sponsored, meaning we do not solicit business advertising, so we are not limited in the content we provide for y'all. With that said, we do ask for your participation on a value for value basis. If you find our show of value to you, then you provide an equivalent portion of your labor and treasure through the donate link on the Road to Concord blog page, show description on Rumble, and in the comments on the other streams. And thank you to all of those who have and will support this show, and also a personal thank you for all the prayers on my family's behalf. We had a death of a close friend this week, and a bunch of other things going on, and it's been a week, so we're looking forward to Shabbat this evening. So
Hey, we all know T.A. Charlie isn't all there. Now, just stay seated and give it a chance. You'll soon realize we not might be the smartest, but we each independently form opinions based on reason and logic. We're free thinkers. Let's see what The Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic has on the lesson plan for today.
All right, real quick. I'm going to answer my email live on the air, Charlie. We were asked if Trump were to win his election, could he fire all these people in the CIA and the FBI?
Oh yeah, I saw that email.
Yes, he can.
He can.
This is one of the problems that Congress created for itself. It thought it was being slick by getting around the Constitution by creating the bureaucracies and giving the bureaucracies authority to make law and then putting them under the executive. They thought they could control the executive that way. But actually what happens is the executive, if those bureaucracies are under the executive, all the rules they make are unconstitutional, which is what the Chevron case was just about, which is why everybody's in a tizzy. But the president is the chief executive. And here's the key, folks. Not only could he go in there and fire everybody in these bureaucracies if he wants to, he can, because they work for him at his pleasure. It doesn't matter what the law says. The law can say, well, no, Congress controls them, but they're under the executive. That would be a violation of the Constitution, because that would be the executive trying to be dominated by the legislature. That don't work. Legislature can't control them. It's entirely the executive. But here's the really good part. Do you know who the head attorney is in this country? I mean, the top attorney, it's the president. He's the chief executive, the chief law enforcement officer, which means not only could he fire them, he could then turn around and tell the DOJ, charge them with this crime and prosecute. Well, Joe, that's against the Constitution. That's political warfare. Not if they actually violated a real law. It's political warfare when you dream something up nobody's ever been prosecuted for in the history of the country, like they did with Trump. That's lawfare. That's illegal. But if you have subverted the Constitution from within the government, violating your oaths of office in the process, Trump could come in, fire the head of the FBI, and then direct that they be prosecuted for subversion. That's legal. Unfortunately, in the world in which we live today, not only would he not do it, the world wouldn't support it because they would think he's doing what Biden did, which actually is a very good segue for getting into where we're going to go today. It may not seem like it, but it is. I started out thinking I was going to just share some more hate for Woodrow Wilson, and we will, and just give us time. But I realized that that's not where we're going to end up going today. Matter of fact, that's not where we're going to end up going from here forward. I have no idea how long I'm going to be on this, but we're going to change gears. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember that TV show Automan, where he makes 90-degree turns, and if you're not buckled in, you get slammed against the windshield. Like Tron, 90-degree turns with the light cycles. But we're going to make it's not going to be that radical, but we're going to make a shift in gears here. I've been threatening for a while to go back to the start of this show and start all over. Today's the day. Today is going to be a primer for where we're going in the future. You're going to get some Woodrow Wilson. Sit down, settle down, get a drink, buckle up. This is going to be interesting. But I got down and I'm starting to do the show prep for Woodrow Wilson. And I realized that it's not fair to pick on just Woodrow. He is a focal point, okay? But he didn't, what's going on in the world today, not just America, the West, the Western world is committing suicide. And it goes back to what we call the progressive era, but it goes back even farther than that. It's a very ancient thing that's going on. Ancient, yes. But I just want to explain it the best I can in modern terms. And by modern, I mean the last 200 to 300 years. Modern, given the grand scale of all humanity, all human nature. So I'm sitting down and I'm going through everything, and I realize that, like happens with my teachings in scripture sometimes, what I'm doing is starting to morph. And one thing leads me to another. And then I'm explaining it to Charlie in the pre-show. And then all of a sudden I realize I'm talking about what's in this book. I didn't even have a time to put this. I mean, I grabbed this 5 minutes before the show started. Actually, 3 minutes before the show started. I got up and I went to the bookshelf and got it. Charlie probably didn't know what I was doing, but he saw me get up to go get it. It's The American Gospel by John Meacham. Now, just let me read the back description to you. Just hang on with me. I know you're not supposed to read on the air, Joe. Rush said it's boring. Just pay attention for a second. Give me your attention. It says, at a time when our country seems divided by extremism, American Gospel draws upon history to offer a new perspective on God and politics. The American Gospel, literally the quote-unquote good news about America, is that religion shapes our public life without controlling it. In this vivid book, John Meacham recreates the fascinating history of a nation grappling with the faith and government, from John Winthrop's City on a Hill sermon to Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence, from the Revolution to the Civil War, from a proposed 19th century Christian constitutional amendment to Martin Luther King Jr.'s campaign for civil rights, from George Washington to Ronald Reagan. American Gospel makes it compellingly clear that the nation's best chance of summoning what Lincoln called the better angels of our nature lies in recovering the spirit of the sense of the founding fathers. In looking back, we may find the light to lead us forward. Now, this was published back in the 80s, I believe. The problem with this description is it's like we are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. It's too open to interpretation. And that is part of the problem with the American progressive movement. The American progressive movement, what exactly is it? I've explained some of it to you, but I have never taken you to school with this. Today is going to be a primer because we're going to go to school with this subject in a way that I have never done before. This is going to be new for me. We're up until now 401 shows, 402 shows. Set the scripture shows aside, that's about a third. So we've got like, I don't know, 300 and something shows here that are about history and logic and stuff like this. And I've thrown, religious teachings into it. But for the most part, We've had our little goggles on and we're out in the ocean and we've been dipping our heads right below the waves so you can see what's going on underneath there. But you're still up at the surface. You're looking below the surface of the water, but you're still bobbling along and affected by the surface waves. You're still at the top. We're going to go down to the bottom of the ocean this time. And the waves aren't going to affect you. And you're going to start learning why I see all of this stuff is interconnected. So where before I've talked to you about fireflies, little fireflies, little pieces of this and that connecting and creating a bigger picture, pieces of the puzzle, whatever. I'm going to start trying to show you why, for me, it's all the water that surrounds me. Fireflies still kind of works as a metaphor or an illustration. But, in this case, it would be the individual waves that are bobbing you around. You become aware of them. It's going to be harder to do because we're going to be down in the bottom of the ocean here. No more waves, just silence of the water that surrounds you. So what I'm going to try to do is teach in a very immersive way. And you're not going to be able to miss a class. You don't want to miss them. From this point forward, if you want to get the most out of what we're going to be teaching, you do not want to miss the classes. Because it's all going to be interconnected in a way like I've never done before. I will throw scripture and history and politics and logic and human nature and reasoning and philosophy all together whenever I need them. I'm going to start, and instead of trying to explain big pieces of the picture, I'm going to try and explain the picture. The focal point is the American Progressive Movement. That's just where we're going to be focusing, but I'm going to try and paint the whole picture around it. So you're going to want to be here as often as you can. From now on, Manic Mondays, I'm going to be using stories that help teach what I've been teaching on Fridays. And I'm going to try to use Manic Monday to show you the effects of what the progressive movement has been doing. But you cannot talk about the progressive movement without talking about religion. You can't do it. And I'll get to that in a minute. For the moment, we want to look at a book. It's this book here. It's in your show notes. If you go to your show notes, theroadtoconcord.com, www, all one word, theroadtoconcord.com, you'll find today's homework, which is all the links and everything we're going to be using today. But this book, this is the American Progressivism, a reader. I've got the Kindle version. This is the hardcover. And the link is in there. You can get the paperback. The paperback is, well, look, I know you're looking at it, $19. Well, you go down here, Amazon's selling it used for $7.08. If you have Prime, that's shipped free, et cetera, et cetera. You can go on eBay to find used ones cheap. And Charlie found one on his where he gets used books. I'm going to give you a week or so to grab one of these. This is going to be a bit of a book study. I want you to get a copy of this book. If you want to understand where we're going, I need you to get a copy of this book. But this isn't going to be a normal book study. We're not going to be studying this to just chapter a week or something. We're not doing that. What'll happen is we'll read one of the chapters of this book, and then we'll have a week or 2 or 3 weeks talking about that chapter and setting up the next. So next week, I'm going to set up the very first opening of the book, the introduction to the book. And I'm going to give you some history, some things like that. And we'll do a chapter in the book. In this case, the first thing will be the introduction. You got 2 weeks to get it and read it. And then after the introduction, there'll be some more classes interspersed. So this book is going to be part and parcel of our show for however long it takes to get through it. Why am I doing this? Up until now, I have told you I understand how to read progressivese, how to understand them, to listen to them. And I've shown you glimpses of it, and I've explained pieces of it. I have never really taught you how to speak progressive. I haven't. I've failed you as a teacher up to this point. But at the same time, we had to lay a lot of groundwork. What I'm going to do will be review for those of you who have been in the class for a long time. But this is an excellent time to bring new people into this class, especially progressives. There's a new book out that's called Deprogramming the American Left. They do need to be deprogrammed. I will show them how they were programmed. But at the same time, I'll show you Republicans how you got programmed in the same process. Because we've all been programmed by the progressive movement. And I'm not only going to teach you how to speak this, I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to literally teach you this language. And it's immersive. This is why I'm saying you have to be here. There is no way for me to start somewhere and teach this progressively, like, math. 1 + 1 is 1, 2, and da, da, da. I can't do that. We're teaching a circle, an ancient circle. So all we can do is jump in at one point and start swimming with the stream and start explaining it as we go. So that's what I propose to do. One of the examples I have for you, have any of you seen the videos out there of Kamala Harris? She's got this saying, imagine what could be without being burdened by what was. And everybody's making fun of her. What the heck does that mean? I know exactly what that means. It's not new. She's talking about Woodrow freaking Wilson and Theodore Roosevelt. She's talking about the progressive dream of being able to throw away the foundation of the United States and make utopia. Imagine what we could do, utopia, without being burdened by the Constitution and Christianity and all the traditions and trappings of the old American culture. That's exactly what she's talking about. Well, Joe, you don't know that. Yes, I do. How can you know that, Joe? Because it's not new. She's actually quoting Woodrow Wilson, not word for word, but thought for thought. She's paraphrasing something he said. Now, I could go just read Wilson's essay. That would help, but that's not good enough. Wilson's reacting to other ideas in his time. So what's he reacting to? That's what I want to start showing you. So where do we begin? First of all, let's start here. I got a little slideshow for you today. The progressive movement. I told you it's going to be very religious in nature. Is it wormwood? Why would I say wormwood? The burning mountain that falls into the sea and poisons, kills 1/3 of humanity, poisons the waters at the fountainhead. What's that? What the heck, Joe? You're in the book of Revelations talking about the progressives. Yes. Speculatively at that. Now, wormwood means poison. Okay. In the prophetic language, the sea is the masses of chaotic, lawless people, non-believers, Gentiles who don't believe in Yahweh. And it's going to poison the waters. The waters are the gospel, the good news of Yahweh, Yahweh's word. At the fountainhead, where's the fountainhead? The fountainhead is the Father and Son. The Son is the water. He's the Word. He's the living water. He's the water made flesh, the Word made flesh. So how do you poison the water at the fountainhead? You do away with God. You say there is no God. There's no such thing as the supernatural. And what happens? 1/3 of the men in the world, human beings who follow this teaching, die spiritually. So it fits the pattern because it's called secular humanism. The problem is there's no such thing as secular. Well, yeah, there is, Joe. Did you do away with God? Yes. What happens as soon as you do away with God? Who becomes God then? Man. And the progressives say exactly that. Do you remember our quotes with John Dewey? Says that the man is his own God and the teacher is the prophet of his new religion. Well, that's where I'm going with this. And this is the setup for where we're going in the next couple of months, year, I don't know, however long it takes. It all starts right here with John Locke and Thomas Hobbes. The idea of the social contract and the idea of the nature of man in society. And we're going to come back to this. We're going to cover Hobbes and Locke again in more depth. The founding fathers went with John Locke. Europe went with Thomas Hobbes. Why is that important? Well, we're going to get into that in the future. Probably start next week. But what I want to show you today, how it connects to the progressive ideology, is right here. The nature of man. Now, John Locke says God makes man naturally free to pursue life, liberty, health, and property as their natural rights, the things you need to live. It doesn't mean pieces of the land. If you look at the Bible, Yahweh never lets the people own the land. They rent it for a certain period of time, then it returns back to the family, the clan that it was given to. The earth doesn't belong to anybody but Yahweh. But your private property, your movable personal property, and this is how the founders talked about property. I've shown you their quotes, and in the future we'll revisit them. Locke says, humanity ought not to harm others in their life, health, liberty, and possessions, and in turn expect their own rights to be respected. This is the latter 6 commandments. Don't steal, don't covet, don't lie, don't cheat. A human being is by nature a social animal. This is the nature of man according to John Locke. Now, according to Thomas Hobbes, human judgment is distorted by self-interest and can be easily swayed with rhetoric that is often neither directed toward the public good nor the individual's good. In other words, you're too stupid for your own good. That's exactly what he just said. So the smarter person can sway you. Human beings are programmed, mechanical objects, to pursue self-interested ends without regard for anything other than the avoidance of pain and the incentive of pleasure. So what Hobbes is saying is you're programmed. You're just a meat machine. And all you look for is pleasure and the avoidance of pain. You're an animal. He says human beings are neither by nature selfish nor rational. In other words, you're totally programmable. Man is not a social animal. That is, society is impossible without coercive power of a state. Okay. This is the part of the problem to begin with. Right there. The progressive likes Hobbes. The founding fathers liked Locke. The two cannot coexist. For the progressive, you are a meat machine. There's no supernatural spirit. You are just a biological computer that can be programmed. Well, now who programs you? If you read Hobbes, it's society that programs you. The problem with Hobbes is society can't come about without a government. What's he mean by that? Well, that's the Leviathan in his book. And we'll get to that again when we cover Thomas and Hobbes in great detail this next time, not just superficial. The thing to remember with Hobbes, though, is he speaks to the progressive. Why? Because the progressive wants to control people. There's a natural inclination for a progressive, what we call the progressive mentality. They're Karens. They want to control everybody. They're naturally made to be in charge of a homeowners association. You know, your grass is 1/2 millimeter too tall. We're going to fine you $50,000. You need to mow it by tomorrow morning. You know, that's that type of people. Okay, cool. So they like Hobbes. The founding fathers recognize that that's not human nature. They're going to go with Locke. The problem here is if you believe that mankind is nothing but a programmable, a blank slate when you're born to be programmed, then what you're going to do is try to program the perfect little people to be in your perfect little society. Because remember, society has to come about by force, coercion. We wouldn't naturally group together in little bands and cliques unless somebody forced us together. You're not going to play football or basketball or go to some sort of social gathering, a book club or cooking class or whatever. You don't do any of that without somebody forcing you to do it. That's what Hobbes is saying, because those are societies. See, Hobbes's fundamental fallacy is he doesn't understand what society means. He has a different definition of society. It's a false premise, and he argues from a false premise, which makes everything else that he argues fallacious, because he's built it on a sifting sand foundation. Locke has built it on the first premise of there's a creator. Hobbes will give lip service to the creator and lip service to religion, but ultimately for Hobbes, man's his own God. Government is God, and the man above it who controls government is the God. Kind of how it works. Now, why is all this important? progressives, the early progressives, had the idea that they were responsible for bringing about the kingdom of heaven on earth. Yes, there's a religious aspect to these folks, and they're going to bring about the kingdom of heaven on earth. They're going to, this is the drive for utopia. Okay. And they're always going to focus on capitalism. Why? Well, the problem with capitalism is it allows for a middle class. The problem with the middle class is you can't control the middle class. You need people poor so that you can control them. Why do you have to control them if you want the kingdom of heaven? Because I have to create the kingdom by making you the perfect subject of the kingdom. So if you're a middle class, I can't control you. You can't be made into good subjects. Therefore, I got to get rid of the middle class. Whether the progressives understand this, communists, whether they understand this or not, that's actually what's going on. You have to understand that we're talking about a spiritual war. There are spiritual beings going at each other through human agency. Okay, they're working through human beings. And yes, I'm telling you that for the most part, most progressives are under demonic control or influence. They just are. And I'm going to explain this over the next few weeks, months, year, however long it takes, in great detail. But I want to start right here with Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy. Our cause is based on the eternal principles of righteousness. Now, stop right there. He means the laws of Yahweh. How do you know that, Joe? Pay attention to what he's saying. This is Bible language. He's using Bible language, but he's twisting it. This is what Satan did, the serpent did with Eve in the garden. He's twisting it to his purposes, and he thinks he's doing correct. Listen, our cause is based on the eternal principles of righteousness, the kingdom of Yahweh. And even though we who now lead many for a time fail, in other words, we're all sinners, in the end, the cause itself triumph, meaning the kingdom will triumph. We stand at Armageddon and we battle for the Lord. That's a Bible quote. The problem is it's not our job to do the battle. Charlie, who does Yahweh say fights for Yahweh?
Who fights for Yahweh?
Doesn't he say he fights for himself
yeah,
and for
he
his
fights.
people?
Yeah, he fights for himself. In
Right.
fact, many times he says, "Stand still, watch this. Hold my beer," in the Southern vernacular.
Yes. The Bible never tells us to do the fighting for him. Because why? Because then we could claim the glory.
What happens when we do?
We screw up. Yes.
Yeah.
We always mess up. That's what happened to Saul.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time.
See, folks, Teddy's religious. He knows his Bible. Thanks, Charlie. He knows his Bible. But he's gotten sideways in his scripture. Pay attention. Teddy again. Each must, and this quote here, that came from the Progressive Party convention in 1912. Which, he was a Republican. Started out that way, yes. But he became a progressive. He's helped start the progressive movement, even before Woodrow Wilson. So here, from his speech, who is a progressive, 1912, each must be his brother's keeper. If the fathers cause others to eat bitter bread, the teeth of their own sons shall be set on edge. That is a perversion of a proverb. In the scripture, it says the fathers will no longer drink bitter wine and set their children's teeth on edge. In other words, it's a proverb against collectivism. He's not only turning it to talk about collectivism, he's saying if you cause others to eat bitter bread. Well, he's twisted the scripture. Now, did he understand the scripture properly? Or was he twisting it out of ignorance, not understand? I don't know. Teddy's not here. I can't ask him. But the progressive movement started in Christian theology, a perversion of Christian theology. We cannot talk about the progressive movement without talking about religion. This man here, William Jennings Bryan, he's a founder of the progressive movement. He was a big socialist. He was for social causes. This is from the Democratic Convention, 1896. He says, "You shall not press down upon the brow of labor this crown of thorns, You shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold. What's he talking about? He's saying you're not going to crucify labor to make yourselves rich. And this is language of the Bible. Crown of thorns. The crown. This is the deification of the working poor. The Bible, we went over this just Wednesday. The Bible says not to make the poor into some sort of moral victimhood or to set them on a pedestal, not to favor the poor. The Bible says that. That is not what this man is teaching. This man is trying to use biblical language to set the poor up as victimhood. Now, even the Bible talks about corruption of the rich, getting rich off of the injustices to the poor. But if you are a just man and it makes you rich, and you treat those who work for you and those you contract with justly, fairly, you pay them their fair wages on time, you do them no wrong, and you get rich in the process, the Bible not once condemns you. Never once will it condemn you for that. This man will. This is the spiritual motivation here, is to get rid of the middle class. I need everybody poor and ignorant and dependent on me so I can create utopia. Whether he knows that or not, whether he's consciously aware that that's what he's arguing for, that is what all socialism argues for. And over the next few weeks, months, or whatever, I'm going to show this to you. Now, that's what this book is for. Here's a quote from the introduction of the book. This is going to be a quote from Ronald J. Pistrito, the author. It says, "It has become possible through an empowered central state to realize the Christian hope that thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." This is a quote from a progressive. "The social gospel adherents considered it to be their mission to fulfill in this life the New Testament call to bring about the perfect kingdom of God." And as you read their literature, which is why we're going to do our book study, I want you to see it in their own words, in the fullest context, not just pulling out a quote here or there. I want us to read the whole essay, and I will set them up. We'll see some of the background. We'll learn a little bit about the person who's speaking in their essays. I want us to see it, full context, and study it. This is a perversion of the true gospel, the progressive movement. But it comes out of the Judeo-Christian ethic, the Christian church. And they believe firmly that they are bringing about heaven on earth, and that individual salvation, and this is key, hear me clear. The progressive thinks that they can save the whole world. And they have to save, the individual is saved by saving the whole world, the whole of society. They believe that they cannot individually, the individual progressive cannot be saved unless they save society. I will prove that to you today using their words, not mine. But remember what I told you. They think they have a moral imperative to save you from yourself. This is where it comes from, the social gospel. This is collectivism. This is where it comes from. This is spiritual in nature. We call it secular humanism. This is not secular. This is man as his own God. Individual men. The individual progressive always think they are their own God. Does 2 Thessalonians 2 ring in anybody's mind right now? They will take the seat. These are all Christians. Nominally, they started out as Christians. They called themselves Christians, but they assumed the seat of God, seat of Yahweh in their heart, and said, now I have risen above Yahweh. I'll do his job for him now. That's what this is. That's what's going on in our world right now. Yes, sir.
A thought just came into my mind. Isn't this kind of like trying to put you back under the law? Because that was collectivism at that time, and now,
yes,
because after Yeshua, it's more of an individual thing.
Yes, but even under the law, you were not. Even under the law, you were not saved collectively. You were still saved individually, but you were dealt with as a collective.
Dealt with. Well, that's a better way to put it, right?
But yes, but you were still individually saved, not as. I know that when people read the Bible, all of Israel will be saved. Be careful with that, because if that's what he meant, he would say
what's your definition of Israel?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, that's the progressive's problem. We all know that the progressives have issues with language, right? We've
Right,
talked that
right.
much
yeah,
here.
Yeah.
Okay. More of that's going to make sense before today's over. All right. Now, let me prove to you what I meant, that they think that they have to save you to save themselves. I told you I'd prove it to you. Whoop. There you go. Right there. My individual salvation will not come without a collective salvation for the country. If you will go to your homework, theroadtoconcord.com. That's not the one I want. Let's see. That's not the one we need. Here it is. This is today's homework. I got those slightly out of order, but that video right there, that's a collection of Obama saying that over and over and over and over again, all different times. And this is another one that explains what he's saying. It's not out of context. These two videos, they're both fairly short. They will show you that that's what this man said. So if this man wants to be saved, he's got to save you and I from ourselves. Do you understand how huge of a problem that is? First of all, that means that he is entitled to do in his mind, he can do anything he has to do to save you. This is tearing up the tares, ripping the tares out of the ground to save the wheat. But what did Jesus say? Yeshua said, no, don't do that. Because in uprooting the tare, you might uproot some of the wheat. Well, he doesn't have to care about that. Yeshua is looking at one weed and one piece of wheat. He's just looking at the wheat. He doesn't care if he kills some of the wheat. Remember the passage that we did? And folks, this is why this class is so important. Anybody remember the show where we were at Davos with the World Economic Forum and the lady said, hey, look, man, as long as we save some of humanity, we've saved all of humanity. For this man, as long as he saves a few people, he has saved all of humanity. So he can be saved. So if 99% of all human beings perish and he saves 1%, he has saved himself because he saved the 1%. That's how his mind works. You think I'm wrong? Pay attention to us for the next few months. I'm going to prove that I'm not wrong. That's what this is. This is Kamala Harris. Once you've read enough of their stuff, that's why we have to do the book study. Quotes are not going to do it this time. I'm not just going to bring the receipts this time, folks. I'm going to immerse you in it. These are the books we're going to be. I want you to buy the one on the left, the American Progressive, the Reader. But this one here, he just came out with. Let me bump that down. This one is fairly new, and it's additional information in it. And you can get this one pretty cheap right now. But in part 2, chapter 5, Making the State into a God, American Progressivism and the Social Gospel. Social Gospel? I've heard about that. Yes, you have. If you're a Christian, you should have heard about the social gospel. It's not a good thing. We'll be covering more of it, but it turns turns government into a state. Well, how does that work? Let me explain real quick. I'll take this out of here. Okay, so the progressive sees their mission as making heaven on earth. They started out with the God of the Bible, and then they create them into their own God of the Bible. But over time, what happens is they remake their God. Okay. We know that man is born as a blank slate and he can be programmed. This is what they believe. So I can progress toward utopia by transforming man, by consciously and intelligently changing human nature. Well, the Bible says human nature doesn't change, not until the remaking of things. That's what being a fallen person is. That's what being in a fallen world means. But what the progressive is thinking is not only can they remake the world and save the world, the universe from itself, they can remake man, all by just speaking it into existence. What this does is it creates a new God. The holy science or the state, but ultimately it's whoever's directing the state, the government, and the holy science. So it's always the individual progressive thinks they're God, but they see the holy science and the state as their religion, and they morph. This is a case of the king is the kingdom, and the kingdom is the king. So the holy science and the government are married together. and whoever's in charge of them is the king of that kingdom. This is straight out of Revelation. Okay, you're going to have the beast is a kingdom, but it's also the head of the kingdom, which is Satan, the serpent, the dragon of old. This is out of Daniel. The king and the kingdom are one and the same. The prince, the spiritual being over the kingdom, the one and the same. The prince of Persia, the prince of Greece. This is all the same thing. So what the progressive does is in their mind, it slowly morphs. So they're going to need a church. What's their church? Schools. Schools are their church, because the church is where you teach the principles of your religion, and that's where you bring your proselytes and everything. So the schools became their church. It wasn't government. It was the schools became their church. And they need evangelists. Well, the teacher is an evangelist. That's a prophet, right? Well, the evangelists are actually the media. What has the media been telling you to do all these time? Go to college, go to college, go to college. We all got to go to college. If you're going to make it, you got to go to college. That was the evangelist. Go to church, go to the church, go to the church, go to the church. And the church is where the prophet is. Remember John Dewey? Prophet. The teacher is the prophet of this new religion. So that was the church. They teach you the new religion. Well, what's the religion? The religion is holy science and government, blah, 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 blah. They need a mission. Heaven on earth is their mission. The scientifically administrated state. They're going to bring about the changing of human nature. They are going to reverse the fall. They're going to reverse the fall. And together, they repeat the apostasy of Rome. Only they do it in a quote-unquote secular method. The problem is there's no such thing as secular. If you kick the God of the Bible out, and you kick Allah, the God of Islam, out, and you kick all the other gods out, the only God left is you. And if you think you can perfect humanity, which is what the progressive says he's going to do, he's going to perfect human nature through science. He's going to correct all the failings of humanity. And that's going to bring about the perfect society. They are going to speak the reversal of the fall, the kingdom of heaven into existence, and prove that they are gods in the process. That's what this is all about. That's the same mistake that Rome made. Okay, the Catholic Church did just that. They put themselves up. The church is God. That's the kingdom. The Pope is God on earth. He becomes the king, et cetera, et cetera. It's the same thing. They replace the Godhead. So it's all about power and submission. For the Roman Catholics, if you submit to them, they'll save you. To the Protestant, they've pretty much gone the same way. If you submit to my denominational doctrines, that'll save you. For the secular humanist, if you submit to their rule, their holy science, that's what's going to save you. It's all collective salvation. The Bible doesn't teach that. The Bible teaches if you submit to Yahweh, the God of heaven, God of all creation, and his son, which is his rules, the Torah, his teaching made flesh, his guidance. If you submit to that king will save you. The difference is not just semantics, it's conceptual. In the case of the Catholic Church, the Pope is the one who's taken control away from Yahweh. In the case of the Protestants, it's whoever's running your individual church that's taking control of Yahweh. I have had a pastor tell me that his church is his ministry, not Yahweh's. That's the same thing as the Pope saying the Catholic Church is my ministry. And you're serving Yahweh. You're serving the kingdom by serving Yahweh with your ministry. No. No, you're taking the glory when you do that. You're religious progressive. Very good of you. You cannot separate these subjects. You cannot separate the progressive from religion, because progressivism is a religion. Secular humanism is a religion. Form and function define, not the word we assign to it. What's its form? How does it function? These things function as religions. This is spiritual warfare. It's all fought by demonic forces and heavenly forces against each other. It's fought through human agency. This is just like it's a perversion of the Holy Spirit working through human agency to bring about the true kingdom of Yahweh. Because in that case, you submit to the Father, and the Father does the work through you. You're not trying to rule over anybody. You're just trying to live the way he teaches you to live. And if you do that, the kingdom slowly forms itself. You're not trying to force anybody to do anything in the proper understanding of the Bible. The kingdom is built by the Father's Spirit working through his disciples. Okay, that's how the whole Western world came to be. And ever since, it's under attack. It's being taken apart. So this is part of where we're at. And this is why we're going to be reading these readers, because this is where we're going to see it. I got those in your homework. You'll also find these two books. They're linked. This is the Essential Woodrow Wilson, but you'll also find Judge Napolitano, Theodore, and Woodrow. I will add to this later. I've got a love-hate relationship with him, but in this case, Mark Levin's doing good work. This is Liberty and Tyranny. He defines the difference as he sees it. For the most part, I generally agree with him. Then he goes, Ameritopia. This is the progressive idea of how to make America into utopia, the kingdom of heaven on earth. This is what the progressives are trying to do. This is a very good book explaining it. I'll link to these later. American Marxism, which is what Woodrow Wilson actually wanted. That's what you always morph into. You start out socialism trying to be heaven on earth, and what you end up creating is satanic kingdom on earth, which is what Marxism is. And then rediscovering Americanism. Now, this is Buckley's conservatism. That's not Americanism as in the American gospel, the founding fathers gospel. But all of this we'll get over. We'll go through. We'll get on all that. And it's coming in the future. Where I want to take you now is these two books. You've seen these before. You've heard of these before. I know you have. The one on the left, Rules for Radicals. That's Saul Alinsky. In the beginning of that book, he dedicates it to Lucifer because Lucifer won himself a kingdom. The progressives are trying to build a kingdom. Well, Rules for Radicals is nothing but The Prince by Machiavelli, updated for modern times. The Rules for Radicals in the 60s, Machiavelli 300-400 years beforehand. But they're the same principle. So why did Rules for Radicals work so successfully and Machiavelli didn't? Machiavelli, if you look at this from a biblical perspective, what probably happened, I'm guessing, what probably happened under the prince is the kingdom was still running the show. There were enough righteous people on earth that did not like Machiavelli and rejected what he taught. So he never, he had influence, but he didn't rule the world. But since that point, the pit got open. Satan is loose to fool the world. Machiavelli couldn't fool the world. People could still see what he was teaching was satanic. It was lawless. But the prince, the book Machiavelli, it got updated under Rules for Radicals after Satan had been loosed from the pit and was running around fooling the nations. Why do I say this? Well, let me show you, because we're going to be looking at Machiavelli in the future. This is the Machiavellian Prince, a summary. Machiavelli, he elaborates the doctrine of raison d'etat, the rule of reason, the day of reason. He justifies the means. The means justifies the ends. Ends justify the means. He believes in that. And folks, Bill Clinton, he has praised Machiavelli publicly before. Bill Clinton liked Machiavelli. The state is sovereign, autonomous, and non-religious. Really? Okay. A prince must combine the qualities of a lion and a fox. In other words, you got to be really crafty and then you have to be really strong and fierce. He uses a double standard of morality. So Machiavelli is okay with hypocrisy. Favor despotic rule. He's okay with the use of force. Maintain a strong army. Human nature is low and ungrateful, so prince must consider this nature of man. In other words, the prince is above the nature of man. It says he should win the popularity of his people, but he must not touch the property of the people. Okay, in other words, you get them to love you, but don't take their property away from them. That'll keep you from uprising. A prince must have counsel of wise men and not of flatterers and separate politics from religion. Okay, and remain free from emotions. Well, except for those last three, our country is ruled by people like the beginning, like the first parts. This is Machiavelli. Well, Saul Alinsky updated it with Rules for Radicals. What Saul Alinsky taught, who is he? Let's look at him real quick. Born to the Russian Jewish parents in Chicago in 1909. Russian Jewish. Geez, there's no prophetic connections here, is there? Russian, communism, Jewish, Marx. Yeah, nothing to see there. Well, Joe, that's just silly. Not if you're looking at this spiritually. If you're looking at this spiritually, this makes a lot of sense. Saul Alinsky was a communist Marxist fellow traveler who helped establish the tactics of infiltration coupled with a measure of confrontation that have been central to the revolutionary political movement in the United States in recent decades. He never joined the Communist Party, but instead, David Horowitz puts it, became an avatar of the postmodern left. Remember, Hillary Clinton loved this man. She was a protege of this man, studied under him. So did Obama. Obama taught his teachings. He identified unemployment, decay, disease, crime, distrust, bigotry, disorganization, and demoralization as inevitable byproducts of life in capitalist America. So to him, all these things are going to happen because of capitalism. Well, folks, all that stuff has happened even before capitalism. So that's a lie. He identified a set of very specific rules that ordinary citizens could follow and tactics that ordinary citizens could employ, no holds barred methods, as a means of gaining public power. That's what rules for radicals are. In other words, this is the revolution. This is how to use force. He created a blueprint for revolution under the banner of social change, social gospel. The American power structure was evil to its core and justified any means. So any way you got to do to get rid of the founding fathers' understanding of proper government and good governance, you got to get rid of that. He influenced greatly two notable disciples, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. This is Alinsky. True revolutionaries do not flaunt their radicalism. They cut their hair, put on suits, and infiltrate the system from within, which is exactly what the 60s radicals did. And they are now running our country. Remember Bill Ayers. He is in the system now. He's one of the heads of the system, helped with Barack Obama and everything, and said he never changed his stripes. He wished he could have done more to destroy this country. Bill Ayers he was influenced by the spirit of the movement of the 60s when Saul Alinsky was active. All of this is spiritually connected. So what else do we have here? Let's do this one next. Obama's playbook. Politics is all about power relations, but to advance one's power, one must couch one's position in the language of morality. Okay, in other words, Satan. You got to advance evil by looking like you're good, you're righteous. This is the way Woodrow Wilson explained this. This has always been a modus operandi of these people because their spiritual father is Satan. There are only three kinds of people in the world: rich and powerful oppressors, the poor and disenfranchised oppressors, and the apathetic middle class. Why do they call the middle class apathetic? Because the middle class thinks they can take care of themselves, so they don't care. They have enough food, enough clothing, they have enough to get their health care. Their needs are met. So they're not needy, and they're not going to want to overthrow it. That's why they're apathetic, because they can't be influenced by you. So he calls them apathetic, but what they really means is they're independent-minded. Number 3, change is brought about through relentless agitation and troublemaking of any kind that radically disrupts society. In other words, what I've told you before, you have to cause chaos so that you can bring your order out of the chaos, thereby proving you're a god. 4, there can be no conversation between the organizer and his opponents. The latter must be depicted as being evil. Therefore, the left will not talk to MAGA, they just paint them as evil. The left has never talked to conservatives, they just paint them as evil. You can't engage them, because if you do, they might make counterpoints to your minions and you'll lose your movement. Satan cannot afford for you to read the Bible openly. The organizer, number 5, can never focus on just a single issue. He must move inexhaustibly from one issue to the next. This is why the left never settles a problem. They just create a new one and move on. It's all about chaos. Total chaos all the time. Number 6, taunt one's opponent to the point that they label you a dangerous enemy of the establishment. That's what's happening in our country right now. Now we're labeling the left a dangerous enemy of the establishment. So when Trump gets in, his supporters will justify the backlash against the left. There's no peacemaker here. This creates an endless cycle of people eating each other. So whoever can step into that void of chaos and establish order, even if it's by a force, tyranny, the masses will welcome it. That's what this is all about. This is about establishing utopia. But according to who? Not Yahweh. The progressive movement started with bringing the kingdom of Yahweh on earth, on earth as it is in heaven. But it has always been. It was never about that. That's what they said. Couch your things in morality. This is why progressives started using Bible language. Couch it as being moral. But it's never been about that. It's always been immoral. It's always been lawlessness. It's always been about Satan. Always. It's just that the mask has come off and people still don't see it. So when we come back from the break, we're going to start with Orwell's 1984. We're not done. I have things to show you, and I will. And we're going to go back to some of the quotes from Wilson and other people. I want to show you this. And this is all to set up what we're going to go back and start redoing again. I've done this before on this show over the course of the show, the 400 shows, but I'm going to go back and we're going to do it more coherently, and we're going to tie it together. We're going to point to how all of these things tie together. And what you're in you're in the middle of a spiritual war. We use that meme a lot. I want you to see it. I want you to see how it all connects. Say, well, Joe, you're supposed to convince me using my heart, not my brain. The Hebrew says your heart is right here. It's the core of your thinking, rational mind, and will, not your emotions and feelings. To the Hebrew, somebody who lives by their emotions is an animal and has not been born again. To the Hebrew, you are won over by reason, which is why Paul didn't go into the synagogues to convert them with flowery language and appeal to their emotions and tug at their heartstrings. He reasoned with them using the scriptures. He did exactly what we're doing. That's what we're going to continue doing. High-level apologetics, but also preaching the true gospel of the kingdom, the way the Father's word teaches us to look at it and live it. Don't leave. It gets better from here. The second hour will hopefully really bring some of this together and start showing you. This book here, that was a blueprint. That book was a blueprint for what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. If you haven't read it, or if you haven't read it in a while, might be time to revisit it, even if it's got to be on audio. When we come back from the break, I'll show you. We'll connect it to the progressives. They are connected. The Fabian socialists and the Progressive Party. Same people, just divided by the Atlantic Ocean. See you in 6 minutes. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you're back in your chair and ready to rock and roll again. Let's put this up. We're going to go to your homework. Toward the bottom of your homework, you'll find additional reading. It's links to other things that I have posted in the past. This one here is from an old blog post. It says, points to ponder the conspiracy, quote unquote conspiracy, we know as the progressive movement. And if you go through it, this is written a while ago. I'm not really worried about the article. It's in there for you if you want. I threw it up here because it will help frame the general issue we're going over with. But one of the men we're going to meet in the Pistrito's Reader, the book I've asked you to buy, you're going to meet a man by the name of Herbert Crawley. He was a progressive. If I'm not mistaken, he was also a minister of some sort, but he was an American progressive. One of the things he said is, it is the economic individualism of our existing national system which inflicts the most serious damage on American individuality. How does economic individualism damage American individuality? That's an oxymoron. That's a self-contradicting quote. What he means is our economic system allows the individual to provide for themselves such that they do not have to be dependent on anybody but God, Yahweh. And that's a problem for the American individuality they want, where you are dependent on them. In other words, I can't save the world if you are economically independent. I can't save the whole of society, therefore I can't be saved. Remember, they believe in collective salvation. There are some links on that in your homework. We'll probably go over that either probably next Wednesday, because it's pure spiritual, and we've got to tackle that subject. But this is what he's talking about. This is why they're against economic individualism. But that connects, what Crowley said here connects directly to this. If you've been successful, you didn't get there on your own. If you've got a business, you didn't build that. It's impossible for you to have built your business. It's got to be everybody. In other words, quit thinking that you individually can take care of yourself. It's all of society. Why? Because if I don't think collectively, I can't save the society, therefore I can't save you. And I can't be saved as well. I want you to pay attention real close here. Obama said that. He says, if you've been successful, you didn't get there on your own. If you've got a business, you didn't build that. Okay. My business. How did I not build it? The people that I did get to help me, I went and found them, I groomed them, I put them together, I organized their efforts so that it worked in my direction. I shopped for the different people who were selling. See, Joe, you didn't do it all on your own. You had other people help you. Yes, but if I'd have just sat on my butt, would my business have been built? No. It was the effort of my labor that built my business. I did have help from other people, but they didn't build my business. And what Obama's saying is, if you got a business, you didn't build it. You didn't build it. You didn't build that business. Yeah, you did. Others worked with you, but it was for their best interest too. They were working for their best interest. They don't want you to think that way, because if you think that way, then you're not going to listen to them. And they have to make you join their collective, or they can't be saved. Now pay attention to what that means. Who's going to save you? Well, in this case, Barack Obama, because he's going to force everybody to do what needs to be done so he can save you. You know what that implicitly means Obama thinks he is? Messiah. Beware, there will be many who come thinking they're the Messiah, claiming to be the Messiah. How was Obama portrayed in the media? The images, the halos and all the looking up. He was a Messiah figure. In the 1920s, Wilson saw himself as a Messiah figure. Mussolini saw himself as a Messiah figure. Hitler saw himself as a Messiah figure. They were all going to save their nations collectively. That's what this is. This is spiritual. You cannot explain this by human psychology. It doesn't work. You can try, but the people who try, that's why they always fail. Come down here. This is so where Woodrow Wilson enters the picture. First, let us not be fooled. Wilson was also a student of Hegel and Marx. This is the fundamental theory of socialism and democracy. are almost, if not quite, one and the same. This is Wilson. They both rest upon the absolute right of the community to determine its own destiny and that of its members. In other words, 51 of us can vote out of 100 that the 49 are going to be slaves, and that's okay because 51 voted to enslave the 49. Limits of wisdom and convenience to the public control there may be. Limits of principle of the things government can and cannot do, upon strict analysis, there are none. Folks, that is Thomas Hobbes. Godless government is God. There are no limits on God. That's what Wilson just said. That's the beast, folks. That is literally the beast that the Bible talks about. This is spiritual. It says, I know that a corps of civil servants prepared by special schooling and drilled after appointment into a perfected organization. They're going to perfect the organization with appropriate hierarchy and characteristic discipline seems too great many thoughtful persons to contain elements which I screwed this up. I'm sorry. I'm going to reread this. I'm thinking ahead of myself, and this is my fault. Wilson says, I know that a corps of civil servants prepared by special schooling and drilled after they have been appointed into a perfected organization with appropriate hierarchy and characteristic discipline seems to a great many thoughtful persons to contain elements which might combine to make an offensive official class. Okay. What he's talking about is the bureaucracy. You're going to be schooled by the Ivy League schools. You're going to be appointed, not elected. You're going to be drilled and perfected. Why I screwed up reading that is because I was thinking, how can an imperfect person perfect other imperfect people? You don't even know what perfect is because you're imperfect yourself. You have no idea of perfection. So what he means is we're going to perfect them according to my idea of perfection, which by my definition is perfect. What are you implying when you write that way? You're implying that you are God. Form and function. The philosopher in me would say, Woodrow, you know you're not perfect. I can show you some of your writings where you've even admitted making mistakes. So if you're not perfect, how can you perfect anything? Well, I'll get it to perfected to the way I make it work. Yeah, perfect according to your will. How is that not going to create an offensive official class? That's the bureaucracy. That's deep state. And it dang sure is offensive to those who love individual liberty. But remember, to Wilson, individual liberty is an offense to what he's trying to do. He's trying to save us all. So I want to go to another one of the things I put in here for you. It's another link of something I've written a while back. You've seen and heard this one before. This is the one where he says about the scaffolding. And then this is the one about men are just clay in the hands of the consummate leader. In other words, you're just the material he works on. He's got to perfect you so he can save humanity. This is John Dewey. But I want you to come down to here. If you think this is not religious, if this isn't spiritual warfare, this is Dr. Chester M. Pierce. He's was a professor of psychiatry at Harvard Ivy League School, specializing in global mental health disorders. He's a Marxist. He's a psychiatrist. This is from his address to the Childhood International Education Seminar, 1973. Quote, every child in America entering school at the age of 5 is insane because he comes to school with certain allegiances to our founding fathers, toward our elected officials, they were taught to respect authority, which is Romans 13, toward his parents, which is 10 Commandments, commandment number 6, toward a belief in a supernatural being, because they believe in Yahweh, and toward the sovereignty of his nation as a separate entity. It's up to you as teachers to make all these sick children well by creating the international child of the future. That is an international Comintern. That's a Marxist. This is globalism, the New World Order, through your education system, which is their church. And then John Dewey, The teacher is engaged not simply in the training of individuals, but in the formation of the proper social life. In this way, the teacher always is the prophet of the true God and the usherer in of the true kingdom of God. The true God is man. There's that kingdom of Yahweh speech. This stuff, that if I was reading this wrong and I'm incorrect in how I'm reading it, why is there so much of it that just falls right into place to tell the narrative I'm telling you? For those who might still be wondering whether or not I've misled you, that's what the next few weeks and months are going to be about. Showing you why I know I'm right in their own words. This is some of the quotes we've already read by Theodore and John Brennings, but we've read Theodore there. This is also Crowley. I mean, that was Pastrito. That's Dewey. But these are all in your show notes. Now where I wanted to take you is here. This is George Orwell's 1984. If you watch the TV show, the movie, it's better than nothing, but you're going to miss the most important parts of this book because you'll miss the thoughts of Wilson in his head and the monologues that are in the book that they just theatrically show in the movie. I want to show a few things that come out of this book to you. I want to try and help you understand what's going on. George Orwell. Power is not a means, it is an end. Alinsky, right? Well, Orwell wrote way before Alinsky. He's writing Machiavelli, but he's also writing Satan. This is what Satan wanted, power, just for the sake of having power. He wanted to be a god. He says, power is not a means, it is an end. One does not establish a dictatorship in order to safeguard a revolution. One makes the revolution in order to establish the dictatorship. The object of persecution is persecution. The object of torture is torture. The object of power is power. He is universally correct. You do not establish a revolution to protect the reason you're revolting, with one exception. One. The American Revolution. What did the founders do? Well, they seized power. They had a revulsion and they seized. No, they didn't. They turned around and handed it right back to the people. That is why America is exceptional. Not because we're better. Look up the definition of the word exceptional. It's because we are an exception to history. Hitler was exceptional. If you understand the word exception. He was different from all other German leaders beforehand in a bad way. We tend to think exceptional means you're better than other people. It can be. It can also mean you're better at being worse than other people. So when you say the United States is exceptional and you understand it in its proper context, what the founding fathers would have meant by it, it's not a brag. It just means we were different. But Orwell, he had it. He's right. The revolution is for power. Power is in tearing, this is from 1984, power is in tearing human minds to pieces and putting them together again in new shapes of your own choosing. Where do you see that happening today? You have got to use my pronouns or I'll cancel you. You have got to admit that I'm a female even though I was born male. You have got to admit that I'm male even though I was born female. I'm a guy with XY chromosomes. I dress as a girl, but I'm pregnant and I'm menstruating. You think that's crazy? You need to look up some of what's going on in your country right now. Or I'm a female who's a guy who's pregnant. Well, that's because you're a female. You're pregnant because you're female. That other guy is just walking around with a baby belly strapped to his waist, around his waist, pretending to be pregnant. That's the type of stuff we're talking about here. You tear minds apart, and then you put them back together, telling them and you wonder why kids are having such a high suicide rate right now. They're trying to live in this crazy world. This is insanity right here. This is insanity. Not believing in God and country and respecting authority. This is insanity. Now, this one here we've got to read. It was with the last revolution and the coming of INSOC. That's the English socialist language. It's a special language. It was with this last revolution and the coming of INSOC that the latest high learned how to keep their position permanently. In other words, the elite learn how to keep their position permanently by cultivating ignorance among the other classes and by constantly surveying them through the thought police. This is happening in our world right now. They're going to keep you ignorant, and they're constantly watching you through social media, AI, and thought police. Part of the strategy included the maintenance of a state continual warfare, which Goldstein discussed in the 3rd chapter. This was in the book. Continuous warfare. The 3 major powers, in the book, were fighting this perpetual war for victory. They were fighting to keep a state of emergency, crisis, always present as the surest guarantee of authoritarianism. You will sacrifice for the crisis. That's what this is. The problem is this: the war is not meant to be won. It is meant to be continuous. Hierarchical society is only possible on the basis of poverty and ignorance. What they mean by hierarchical is feudalism. You can only have a higher state, a higher caste where the ruling elite are elite and get to live like celebrities if you have a state of poverty and ignorance. If you have a middle class, they cannot live the life they want to live. Continues, the war is waged by the ruling group against its own subjects, and its object is not the victory over either Eurasia or East Asia, but to keep the very structure of society intact. George Orwell, 1949, from the book 1984. Have you not heard me explain to you the moral equivalency of war? Jimmy Carter talked about it in his presidential campaign. Oh, wait a minute. Very good progressive. They all run in the same circles. Jimmy Carter talked in a lot of religious language. He was going to save us all. The problem was he's not God, he's not the Messiah, and he can't save you because collective salvation is a lie. But what this is always with the crisis. Why? Because the crisis lets you do things you couldn't ordinarily do. Why? Because the people will sacrifice for you to say, oh, wow, they're looking for a Messiah. There you go. You're putting yourself forth as Messiah. So you can get the people to do the things you want them to do. And they'll never question you because they just want to be safe. Which is the progressive idea that people are just stupid, dumb, bewildered animals. Hobbes. That is a very negative way of looking at humanity. The problem is too many of humanity, too much of us, prove them right. That's on us. It doesn't mean they're correct. That means that we are lazy and we're not taking responsibility for our own welfare. Next one here. I want you to pay attention to this too. This is we're in a constant state of war right now. So everything Orwell told us was going to happen in 1984. Check, 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 and more check. In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible because there'll be no words in which to express it. Every concept that can ever be needed will be expressed by exactly one word, with its meaning rigidly defined and all its subsidiary meanings rubbed out and forgotten. So in other words, we'll have one word for everything. They'll be happy. They'll, whatever. We won't have joy or elation. There'll just be one word, happy. Everything has to fall under that. As soon as they perfect the language, they can control your thinking because you don't have a word to think it. So if you don't have the word, you can't think it. That's poppycock. That's stupidity. That's ignorance. That's thought control, mind control by childish people who have not understood how language works. There was no such thing as the word fascism until Mussolini coined the word. So if you take somebody like me, the way I think, and I'm just using myself as an example. You put me in a world that only has these words, and I come up with a concept in my head that doesn't match any of the words you've given me. Guess what I'm about to do? We'll make up a word, which is why people like me need to be eliminated. This is why those who are going to save the world always have to eliminate the mavericks, because the maverick won't go along with them. And they can't be saved if they don't kill the maverick to save themselves. Don't you understand that it is better for the nation that one innocent man die for the good of the whole nation? Well, was it for the good of Israel, or was it for the good of the Sanhedrin and the chief priest at the time? It was for their own good. But their heart, their mind, their head, the Hebrew heart is your will, and it's deceitful. So they fooled themselves into thinking by crucifying the innocent Christ, they'd save themselves. But what they meant was the nation. So they always put a moral excuse in front of you so that you think, oh, well, this is for the good of the nation. It was for their good, so that they wouldn't lose their position in power. So they killed an innocent man. You want to see where that happens? Kamala Harris knowingly put an innocent man on death row to further her political career in the DA in California so that she could sleep her way into the vice presidency. And now she's running around talking like how she's president. Yep, there you go. That's the exact same thing that happened in the Bible with the Sanhedrin, with Caiaphas and Jesus. Exact same thing. That's what every progressive is doing. Whether they acknowledge it consciously or not, I don't care. Form and function define. That's what's going on. Make sure when you look in the mirror, you're not doing this. The revolution will be complete when the language is perfected. Now tell me, you're politically awake in this class. Tell me you don't watch the media and see them playing with language. That's what the pronouns are all about. Tell me you can't see them bastardizing our language into something it's not meant to be. How many examples could each of us come up with if we tried? Now, here's another one you need to pay very close attention to, because this quote leaves something out. Every one of these quotes I found like this, they quote this section, they leave out the sentence before it. I'll show you why they leave out the sentence before it. This pertains to today. Remember the cancel culture? We got to tear down the statues. We got to erase names and all this stuff. I got to control the future by controlling the past. I got to erase the past. Every record, this is from Orwell's 1984, every record has been destroyed or falsified. Every book rewritten. Every picture has been repainted. Every statue and street building has been renamed. Every date has been altered. And the process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has been stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right. I'm going to set that aside for a minute. Nothing exists but the endless present. I think it was Cicero said, the man who lives without knowing and understanding the past lives the life of a child forever. And it's not a child like Yeshua, Jesus talking about, you got to come to me like a child. That's trust. That's childlike trust. This is the child who just doesn't know that anything existed before them. So everything in this world will just be what exists in your own life. That's the life of somebody who never grows up. Okay? That's what happens. Now, one of the other things that you'll find is somebody said, the man who plants a tree shows that he's finally started to understand his role in life. He's maturing. He's becoming a man because you're doing something for the future, a future you'll probably never see. Even if it is something you're going to do. Charlie planned very well for his retirement. That shows that he's thinking of the future. This is why he won't have as much trouble in the futures. When he's retired, in his retired life, he will have financial security. This person here doesn't think about past or future, only in the present. Now, what verse did they leave out? What line did they leave out that would be so important? I'm going to show you. Already we know almost literally nothing about the revolution and the years before the revolution. Every record has been destroyed or falsified, Nothing about the revolution or the years before it. Already we know nothing about the progressive movement. It's being erased. And that's why we're going to go back and study this puppy. So that we can reclaim, and that's why we study the American Revolution in the founders' words. This will be progressives in the progressives' words. And understand that when Hillary Clinton said in the debate, I'm a progressive, as in the Wilsonian progressive, early 20th century Wilsonian progressives, she's hearkening back to what they're thinking. And then when Newt Gingrich says he's a realpolitik like Woodrow Wilson, that is ends justifies the means. Newt Gingrich, if you're a law and order, original intent, founding fathers type of individual, Newt Gingrich is not your friend. He's not. The Republican Party is not your friend. The Republican Party morphed under Abraham Lincoln. And, well, that's when it was formed. But it definitely morphed under Teddy Roosevelt. Abraham might have been okay in his last 6 months. But we're going to have to talk about him. because when he started the War of Northern Aggression, that was very progressive. We got to save the country by forcing the South back into it, because each individual state depends on the whole country. This is not good stuff, folks. This is all spiritual warfare too. So these books here, Orwell's 1984 and Brave New World on the right, they're the blueprint of what was to come. And we're living in the world. It doesn't look exactly like in the books, but it's very close. If you look for the ice cream in these books, you'll find it. Now you're about to, if you're a Bible believer who's serious about their faith, you're about to live in a world in which these two books are very important to you. The protagonist in each book, Wilson or Will, I think it was Wilson. Anyhow, Winston in 1984. And then I don't even remember his name, caveman dude in Brave New World. You know, the Tarzan figure who was found on an island and brought into the society. Winston gave in. He agreed that, yeah, there were 5 lights when there was only 4. He gave in. The other guy killed himself. In Brave New World, the protagonist there kills himself. You're about to be in a world where you either have to give in and go along or remove yourself from it, because it's not going to be worth living in. Tell me that's not spiritual. If you're spiritually awake, you're not going to want to live in the world they're making. If you give in and go along, you're not spiritually awake. You've given up. You've surrendered. And all of that leaves you with, how's your spiritual warfare going? Because this is spiritual warfare. Every bit of it. All of it. It's the only way to harmonize everything I see in history, everything I see in human nature, everything I see in what's going on in the world around us today. And it does. It explains all of this. It explains the progressives' hostility to the Constitution. It explains why they think that they're elite and why they think they're messiahs, why they think they have to save us from ourselves. It explains, I mean, every bit of it. Anything you throw at me today, I can pretty much pigeonhole into where it goes categorically based on looking at it from a biblical perspective. That's all I got to do. And when you give me something that's consistent and coherent and doesn't self-contradict, if you give me a way of looking at the world that way, I have to conform unless you give me a better explanation. And I've looked. I have never found a better explanation anywhere. This fits. This fits everything. Case in point, the libertarians think they've found a better explanation without God. And they use Ayn Rand is one of them, but I'm going to use her just as an example, but I'm not picking on her because she's not the only one that wrote this way, but she's their model because of Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged and all. A lot of truth in her books. A lot of truth. But ultimately, when you look at them, she creates her own idea of morality. That's Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes straight up says, government creates morality. Society creates ideas of what's right and wrong. Well, if society creates the ideas of morality and what's right and wrong, then society can change them, in which case it's not morality. It's ethics. That's why I differentiate between the two. The concept of morality has to be right and wrong for all men at all times, everywhere. And by men, I mean human beings, all sentient beings. All right? If you're sentient, morality should apply to you as well. So if a UFO shows up and ET jumps out, they should have a moral code that's identical to ours. Either that or one of us is not sentient. It's the way it should work. Ethics is what's right and wrong within your society or your profession. But ethics does not make it moral. How do you know that this is a true principle? How many times are laws written that are immoral? Well, that goes right that flies in the face of Thomas Hobbes. Hobbes says if the king makes a law, he's absolute sovereign. You got no dispute. If the king is evil, tough luck. You have no justification to overthrow the king. You just got to go along with it. So the king decrees, hey, any girl I see on the street that I got a fancy for, she's mine tonight. And you can't say anything about it. It's not immoral. I happen to think that the woman that's about to be forcibly violated by the king is going to think that's immoral. But according to Hobbes, she has no right to think that way. Or her husband. Because the king's the king. And it's moral because the king decreed it. So tell me how that works. How can Hobbes say that that's moral and lawful just because the king said so? And that you have no right to think that's immoral, even though you and I both know internally that that is definitely immoral. How's that work? It's cognitive dissonance. Whatever the king says gets to go, even if, and it's moral because the king said, but even if it isn't. It's a contradiction in thought. And from a contradiction, all things follow. If you read Leviathan, on the surface, it sounds great. But that's because he's couching his totalitarian ideas in a moral camouflage. And that's how this always works. It's how the progressive mentality, and we shouldn't even use progressive. This is how, and we shouldn't use secular humanist. We should use something that's more descriptive, like the covert tyrant. You know, the one who leaks around in the dark and the shadows until finally he's taken over and he doesn't have to worry about hiding anymore. Remember what Saul Alinsky taught? Infiltration. That's covert takeover. That's called subversion, folks. That's the definition of subversion. Infiltrate and change the government from within. That's subversion. That's exactly what Woodrow Wilson taught. That's what he wanted to do. That's what he meant by using the existing government as a scaffolding. All of this works together. If you take it, like so many people do, one piece at a time, and you look at each individual piece, and you have no idea that the other pieces exist, you're not going to see where the piece fits into the puzzle. You won't be able to see the bigger picture because you don't see where the pieces fit together. I've taught a lot of the pieces. Some of you have intuitively started to see how they go together. I have got to take the next few weeks, months, however long it takes us, and I've got to start showing you the whole puzzle the best I can. This is going to be tough. This is going to require some effort from you. Like I said, get a copy. Buy it used if you need to. That's okay. Get one. You're going to want to read some of this for yourself. If you can't afford it, that's cool. I got it. I understand. I've got it on my Kindle. I'm not going to copy it from the Kindle, and I'm not going to do it that way because that's not right. What I want to do is show you in the reader how this is going to work. You know, I'm going to go over it for those who can't afford the book, and we'll read the book on the Kindle reader. That's how we'll read each chapter. Put it up on the screen and we'll read through it. But you should have your own copy of this. It'll help if you want to understand it. It'll help a lot if you're studying your scriptures side by side. I will try to throw in a few Worship Wednesdays that, like next week, I think we need to talk about collective salvation. You're going to find in your homework, this I can give you. If you go to your homework and you right there and you scroll down, you're going to see there's a section down here. This is the social gospel. What is the social gospel, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to see a few of those. And then down underneath it, yeah, right here, I've got 2 links for you. And I tell you some warnings. What is collective salvation? And then collectivism versus individualism, reading the Testament with first century eyes. Now, this one here, if you're a Bible believer, I put a note in your homework. Be very careful with this. This is a fallacious piece, and it will appear to explain the Old Testament, ancient Near East, Hebrew way of looking at things collectively, and the Bible to say that we are saved collectively. And that is not what the Bible teaches. This was shared, and this story were shared as bad examples. This is how easy, and the reason I'm doing this is to show grace. To show grace to the progressive, the early progressives, or somebody who's just starting to be a progressive. When you look at those links, it looks to make sense until a teacher who actually understands the scriptures well comes along and says, yeah, but look at this passage and this passage and this passage. They contradict what he says. And then look at the one he's talking about. It doesn't exactly say what he says it says. You let him explain it to you, so you looked at it that way. Now go back and read it for yourself and pay careful attention to the 20 verses before and the 20 after. He's cherry-picked it. That's a fallacy. And he's couched it in a way that doesn't belong. What he uses in that one video, he uses the section in Acts. Peter goes to the house and it says the whole house was saved that day on account of one man. So see, collective salvation. The whole household saved because of the one man. No. You weren't saved because of one man. He didn't save you. What happened there is because that one person converted, because the head of that household converted, the others were convinced and got baptized as well. They weren't saved because he was saved. They were saved because he was convinced, so they became convinced as well. It wasn't a case of I had nothing I had to do with this. If this were the case, if the collective salvation were true, then I could save you and nobody else in the world have to do a dang thing. You don't have to accept Christ. All I got to do is I got to do all the work myself, and you don't have to be saved. That is the definition of the Messiah. The Messiah saves you all on his own. I am not the Messiah. Neither is Barack Obama. Neither was Woodrow Wilson. Neither was Teddy Roosevelt. Neither was Goodnow. Neither was Crowley. No progressive is the Messiah. Never will be. And yet, they're convinced that they can save the world, save themselves by saving the world. Save the cheerleader, save the world. You know, you think that's y'all know the TV show Heroes? The refrain was save the cheerleader, save the world. Joe, that's not connected. Unless, of course, I'm looking at it spiritually. Now it is connected, isn't it? Because the idea, the concept, the refrain is in your popular culture. How'd that happen? Because the media is their evangelist. Not just the news media. All entertainment media and news media has become entertainment media. It's their evangelist. Go to church. Where's the church? The schools. Go to college. It's a religion. You have to look at it for what it is. If you think it's secular humanism, God's got nothing to do with it, you'll never see it because you've blinded yourself to the truth of what you're dealing with. We're not going to do that here. All right, Charlie, throw yourself in here. Thoughts, comments, because I'm talked out for today. Hopefully this is a pretty good setup and introduction to what's coming. I hope.
Yeah, I hope so. I think this will be good to kind of do a review, but it'll be a review that kind of drills down deeper, hopefully. So buckle up.
We got a quick comment on the board. I want to look at it real quick here. Mr. Spikes was talking about he wanted to watch Evil, but he said, but his wife said she did like the previews, or I'm assuming he means didn't like the previews. You're not supposed to like that show, Aaron. That's the point. This is a TV show on Paramount. It's about, the premise is two non-believers and a man studying to become a priest in the Catholic Church start evaluating demonic possessions. And one of the things in it spoke directly to something that happened last Friday, I think it was, or last Monday, with one of your classmates. He's having trouble with his daughter going around the parental blocks and getting into these different programs and everything that are bad influences on her, spiritually bad influences. In this show, the first season, it takes a couple shows to get going, but all new programs that they do. But once you get in it, you realize there's a video game that's being used to reach your children. And the kids go around the parents to get into the video game, and it causes them problems. And they don't see it because it's a secular family. She's agnostic. They're not raised to look at spiritual things. So the kids don't see the demonic side of it. They just think, oh, scary, evil, whatever, that person's bad or whatever. They don't see the spiritual war. And then later on in the first season, there's a video game they get into that causes problems. You know, it's spiritually bad. In the second season, there's another video game that you go out and live, and it gets you into the underworld. And they're all making out like, oh, this is cool. Let's go to the underworld. Only it's real. It takes you to hell. And all the kids want to go to hell. And it gets a couple of them killed in the show. And these types of things, people poo-poo. You need to pay attention to what goes on in these video games. This is where a lot of the pedophiles find their victims. The reason I suggested the show is because if you think this is nothing, this show will illustrate exactly how this happens. Once you know what you're looking for, it's easier to defend against it. If you don't know what you're looking for, it can hide in plain sight. Case in point, we've got a jaguar in our area. Floridians, they call it the Black Panther. And there's no such thing as a Black Panther. They're jaguars. They're built different. They used to be native to the whole southeastern United States down into Mexico. They are still in the Everglades, but they're being driven north because the anacondas and the pythons down there are eating everything that the jaguars used to eat. So they're being driven north. And they're in the Gulf Coast region. We've got one in our area. It comes through about every 18 months to 2 years. We saw it the other day. My wife called me. She said, hey, look, the jaguar's in the backyard. Incidentally, the state of Florida says they don't exist, but if you kill one, you go to jail. Nah, you'll have to explain how that works to me. But anyhow, my wife was looking at it. I've got the rifle. I'm kind of trying to find it. And I can't see it. She sees it. I can't see it. What it had done is it had moved into the shadows. Because she watched it go into the shadows, she could see it. I couldn't. You won't pick these things out if they're in the shadow already. That's how this thing with evil works. If you know what to look for, you'll see it. She knew what she was looking for. She could see it in the shadow. I knew what to look for, but I couldn't see it hiding in the shadow. Because she saw it happen, she was able to see it. Somewhere along, cat has seen a rifle. As soon as my rifle went up into my shoulder, he jumped and took off. Now I saw him because I made him move. If you spotlight evil, it'll jump, and then it becomes very apparent. The whole reason I explain this movie Evil is because it shows you what to look for. It strips away the camouflage. Once the camouflage is stripped away, there it is. It's like in the movie Predator. Once you knew what to look for, you could find the predator even when it's camouflage on. You've got to know what you're looking for. That's why I suggested the TV show. For believing people, it should be a must watch. Preachers ought to be making their congregations watch it on Wednesdays. It is that important. It's hard to watch if if your soul is aligned with Yahweh and his son, the Messiah. It's hard to watch because it's evil. And you're sitting there going, how do you people not see this? Because they're always explaining everything away with natural occurrences. But you as the audience, you get to see, yeah, you're explaining away everything but the real stuff. You don't even see the real stuff. Yes, sir.
I'm just listening, and and the thing that came to mind was, that's kind of like the stuff, where people, they get into this all natural stuff and everything, and I like to tell people, yeah, well, snake venom's natural too. But,
yes.
So.
Well, in the TV show, there is one character who's demonic. And he even admits to the non-believers that he's demonic to their face. And they still don't believe. The only one that realizes he's a demon is the priest. The priest in training, because he believes in the spiritual. The only other problem I have with this show is one of the main characters is a Muslim. And they tend to, you got your Chrislam going on in this show as well. This movie is not good. This TV show is predictive programming trying to deceive the world into thinking that the spiritual is nothing to worry about and entertain you at the same time. It is literally what goes on with the video games. Oh, this is just cool, but it's not real, etc. And that's how you get sucked in. The problem is when evil boasts, if you have spiritual eyes to see and ears to hear, it parades itself down Main Street naked. So for a believer, you'll see exactly what you should see in this movie. But for an agnostic or not believer, this movie will lull you right into sleep and it will finish blinding you. So if we don't have anything else, I have talked myself out. And the rule is once I do that, shutting up. And
Yep. Move it along.
I don't see anything on the board. And they know that Yes,
Lord's
Clay,
been pretty
Paramount
quiet
is a
today.
woke company. All right, then. That'll wrap us for today.
Bloop.
All right, Charlie. Well, I got to let him control that screen when we both hit the button at the same time. It's bloop, bloop. I hope this will pique your curiosity for what's coming in the next couple of weeks to months. I'm going to try real hard to do a good job, my best effort to expose you to what's going on, the spiritual side and the human agency side. And I'm not going to try to villainize progressives, but I'm not going to excuse them either. A lot of them probably get sucked into what they're doing because they don't look at it from a biblical perspective. And even if they're believers who are in church, if they don't read their Bible and study it, it's easy to deceive you. Just like Eve was there face to face with God. And she knew exactly what God said, and she was very easily twisted, tempted away from the true words of God and into what, the devil twisted him into being. It's easy to do. And this is why you always have to be grounded and rooted. You have to, if you're a believer, you have to understand the gospel. The kingdom of God is the gospel. It's not the individual salvation. It's the kingdom of Yahweh is the gospel, but you got to understand it correctly. You got to know the ideology, which is following the Father's teachings. That's what last Wednesday was about. This just 2 days ago, the Torah. It's the Father's wisdom book. That's the goal. Live according to my heavenly Father's teachings. You got to train yourself to hit the target so that you don't sin. That's what sin means, missing the target. So I got to train myself to live the way the Father wants me to. And then I can't force others to do it, but I can support them. If I can urge them to try to follow the Father's teachings, and I can support those who are trying to follow by saying, hey, encourage them, hold them up, whatever, but I can't force the kingdom on anybody. And then I have to spend my entire life checking myself to make sure I stay on target and I don't drift and I don't stray. When I was in the Marine Corps, we did this with each other. We said, stay motivated, Marine, stay motivated. It's something we said, but it was constantly meant to check on each other. And then if you were doing wasteful things, when NCO or an officer would say, hey, that's the people's money, quit waste. We checked on each other, literally. There were certain things we said and did that become mantras of our daily life that we trained ourselves. When somebody said it, you checked yourself and it would affect our behavior. We didn't dismiss it. Because if you did in the military, the person with the senior rank telling you to check yourself, if you didn't check yourself, they'd check you for you. So that's not quite a perfect example here, but even in the Bible, you've got to correct a brother when they're not doing, and if you have to, you throw them out of the fellowship. But that doesn't mean that you force the brother to do what you're telling him to do. If he doesn't correct himself, you kick him out. The military, they'll force you to do it. Well, they'll give you combinations of choices that you're going to end up choosing the one they want you to choose. Wink, wink. But that's the whole point here. I want to show you how all of this is supposed to work, as opposed to how it's morphed into what the progressive movement is, or what we call secular humanism, so that you can better see it, so that you will be able to understand it for yourself in the future and help explain it to others. It's a shield of a form, but I'm going to warn you now, we can't do this study without bringing the Bible into it, because this study directly deals with a perverted teaching of the scriptures. That's where this came from. A misunderstanding of the true message of the Bible. That's where Islam came from. That's where the Roman Catholic Church came from. That's where the Protestant Church comes from. It's all misunderstandings of the whole of Scripture. How am I going to explain the progressive movement to you, knowing that it is a perversion of the Bible, if we don't talk to the Bible or talk about the Bible? That's the source of all of this. That's where it came from. That's what happened. I'll show it to you in the coming weeks and months. Hopefully you've got friends that this might benefit. Ask them to come on in. This will get thrown to YouTube up until the time that YouTube finds out what I'm doing. If we're effective with it, they're going to shut this one down on YouTube. I promise you. We'll see. I'll try to watch my language, but it's just the nature of the subject that's going to get us in trouble on YouTube. But other than that, we're going to ask you to send people here and bring them here. Explain me. Tell them what you need to tell them about me. Get them ready. I know that I'm a acquired taste. I got that. But we're here to help. We're here to serve. If you have questions, email us. I will answer the email, but I answered one of those questions at the beginning of the show, but I'll go back and answer in the email. We're going to keep doing Manic Mondays, but we're going to more specifically pick stories that talk to the lessons and the principles that we're going to be explaining on Fridays about the progressive movement. And Worship Wednesdays, when and where applicable, I will bring the spiritual messages into Worship Wednesday. If I can manage to work this out, Yahweh help me, all 3 days of the week are going to start morphing together to help you see the bigger picture. They'll be intersupportive days. I guess, like Charlie said, we're going to be learning how to actually walk the walk and see the evil around us. I hope. We love each and every one of you. We thank you for being here. Please give the show a like or thumbs up if you like what we're doing. Show your support. That'll help the program spread, more people to see it. Send links directly to your friends, family, coworkers, whoever you want. Send it directly to them. Don't just hit share on social media. This show does get throttled. We know that as a fact. It's not paranoia. And like I said, explain me if you like what we're doing and you want to see us continue, especially if you want to see it to where we can upgrade our program on Rumble. We need a reliable income every month from folks that we can afford to pay the Rumble bill. And I don't want to have to keep bouncing back and forth every month for the bandwidth. Go to the donate page. $5 cup of coffee is what we're looking for. Just buy us a cup of coffee. $5 cup of coffee. It's Starbucks. And that's cheap from what I understand at Starbucks. Just set up for $5 every month reoccurring payment. We're not making money here. We're just paying the bills. We could use your help. Have you noticed there's no advertisers here? If you like this show, thank the members of this class who are paying for it. We would no longer be here if it weren't for your classmates. They are paying 100% of the bills here. And I'm going to let you know, I see the numbers who watch us. It's just a handful of your classmates toting the bill right now. If you do like what we're doing and you can honestly afford it, give it some thought. I hate asking you for this. I do. I don't like this. I hate it. Charlie's better at it than me. It's not that he likes doing it either. He's just more practical there. But it's got to do with my personal background, and I'm treading on potentially dangerous ground for me when I do this. So, but it has to be done. Without your support, we're gone. So y'all take care of yourselves. It's Sabbath, sundown tonight. We keep the seventh-day Sabbath. We're going to be tomorrow, if you watch us on our YouTube channel with our congregation, we're going to be going to start a study in Galatians. This is one of the go-to chapters for quote-unquote Christians that think the law is done away with. Oh my gosh. Peter was talking about those folks when he said to be careful with Paul, because that is not what Paul's saying in the book of Galatians. Just the opposite. But you got to know how to read him. No, not twist him. Put him in the context of his day and time. Remember, he's a Pharisee of Pharisees. He can recite the first 5 books of the Bible like this, in the beginning, and go through the whole thing without ever having to open his eyeballs. He knows the Torah. And he tells you he does not teach against Torah over and over in his letters. Nobody wants to pay attention to that. So we're going to be doing Galatians tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to it. It's the start of that one. Next Monday, Manic Monday, we're going to do some stories that are going to help start tying into our Friday shows. Next Wednesday, we're going to probably talk about the collective gospel. We have to. Next Friday, we need to revisit Hobbes and Locke. We got to get those two under our belt, because that's very crucial to understanding your Bible as well. So we'll get that under our belt. And then we'll go from there. For the weekend, y'all take care of yourselves. Hope everybody had a good, safe July 4th. Y'all have a good, safe weekend. We love each and every one of you, and we'll see you Monday. Bye-bye.